Hey guys, I'm glad you're here for today's lesson. What you're going to need for your lesson today, you're going to need your iPad or computer. You're going to need your calculator. This is my calculator. It's a graphing calculator. You don't need a graphing calculator if you want to use a scientific calculator or just a smaller little calculator. Any kind of calculator will work for this assignment. You don't have to graph with it. And we're going to have some Desmos activities. That's what you're going to use your computer or iPad for. So, our question that we're going to be exploring today, we're going to look at two people, James and Sally. Now, James rents out his house for $1,000 each month, and and then James saves that money. So James is renting it for $1,000 a month. James is saving that $1,000 every month, putting it into account. Sally has $100. Sorry, Sally has $100 in her account, in a savings account, and it earns 2% interest every month. So James is adding $1,000 each month to the account. Sally has $100, but it's only earning 2% each month of what it is. So we're going to look at whether Sally will ever earn more money than James, and her amount will grow to greater than the amount that James has, or not. So what you're going to do, you're going to open up your first Desmos lesson activity, and that's going to be your first question on there. You're going to answer that question. You're going to work your way through that activity to explore that. So the activity part, in a couple slides, it's going to ask you to do your activity with your calculator. So what you're going to do is you will take your calculator, and so for Sally's, you're going to take your calculator and you're going to type in 100, you're going to hit equals, then you hit times 1.02, right? Because times 1.02, that's the same as adding 2%, because 0.02 is 2%, and plus 1 because we're keeping our original amount. So times 1.02, you're going to hit enter. So it should say 102 now. So you're going to use your phone, your iPad, your laptop, whatever. You're going to set a 30-second timer, and you're going to click start on the timer, and you're just going to click as many times as fast as you can. Click equals or enter, whichever that is on your calculator, for 30 seconds. And once that timer goes off, you're going to stop, and you're going to see mine right now says 151.56. So I would take that number if it was 30 seconds, which you're going to have a little higher number probably than that after 30 seconds. I didn't go for the full 30. You'll take that number and you will record it in the data table for Sally after 30 seconds. And then, this is important, don't clear your calculator. You're going to keep that number there and go another 30 seconds. Press enter some more for 30 seconds, record that number. Do that all the way until you get to 5 minutes. And then for James, it's going to be the same thing, except for you're going to start with 1,000. You're going to do enter, and then instead of doing times, you're going to do plus 1,000, and then you'll hit enter, 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 enter. For his, do the same thing, 30-second intervals till you get to 5 minutes, recording your numbers at every 30 seconds. You'll move on, finish that activity. You're going to graph both of them and see what happens. So you can pause this video here and go ahead and do that, and then come back here for more information. Okay, so now that you've finished that video, or that lesson, sorry, what did you find out? We found out that Sally will eventually get more money than James, right? Now it took a lot of clicks. If you notice, it took 5 minutes of clicks, so like that would be a lot of months. But we saw that eventually, even though you would think 100 and then only 2%, that might never outgrow adding 1,000 every time. But you see that eventually it does, because as that number gets bigger and bigger, and you're taking 2%, so So each time, so you got 2% of 100, that's only 2. But then you get up, you keep getting up, and then eventually you've got 2% of 1,000, that's 200. So each time you're adding more and more, while with James, he's only adding 1,000 every time. So eventually, we're adding way more than 1,000 every month for Sally, right? So what we see here is that we've actually got two different kinds of equations. Sally has what we call an exponential equation, because if you write out the equation, there's actually an exponent in the equation of, if you write y equals, whatever. So for James, we'd have y equals 1,000x. X is the number of months, y would be the money, right? So Sally's a little more complicated, but it has an exponent in it. That's the point. So we have x to the something. And so that's going to be an exponential function. And so we can see some other types. So other exponential functions might be x squared or x cubed, x to the 56th. Anything with x to something, that's going to be an exponential function. And then a linear function, that's what we call James's, because he's growing by the same amount every time. And you saw on that graph, that's going to make a line, right? While the exponential function, it kind of flat and then curved up really steep. But that linear function, that's what James has. It's going to be a straight line, and it could have a different slope, whatever. But it's going to be a straight line. And so that's what we call a linear function. And that's going to have the equation like y equals something times x. So and that something is just going to be like just any number. So you have 2x, 4x, 1,000x, 1,000,000x. But those are all going to be linear functions, just with different slopes, right? Going to have another Desmos activity for you, and this is going to be the last part of this assignment. You're going to follow that link for the second Desmos activity, and it's going to take you through just some final questions about this, and it's going to ask you kind of to apply what we just learned and to your everyday life. So go ahead and finish that up, and that'll be all for this lesson. Thanks, guys.